Imagine walking into a bakery in Constantinople around 500 CE. You ask about the bread. Instead of telling you the price, the baker declares the son is inferior to the father. You try the bathhouse. Is my bath ready? The attendant responds, the son was made from nothing. This isn't a joke. It's a contemporary account from Gregory of Nyssa describing how obsessed ordinary people were with theological debates. Shopkeepers, bakers, and bath attendants weren't making small talk. They argued about questions that could determine whether you spent eternity in heaven or hell. Emperors were terrified. Getting this wrong could tear the empire apart. And it did. These debates fractured Byzantine Christianity for centuries. Their consequences remain visible today in churches across Egypt and Ethiopia. Now, here's the fundamental puzzle. Christians believe Jesus Christ is both God and human, but this creates an impossible logical tension. God cannot suffer or die. By definition, God is eternal and unchanging, yet Christ suffered crucifixion and died on the cross. Both statements must be true for Christianity to work, and this isn't philosophical nitpicking. If you get the answer wrong, the entire mechanism of salvation breaks down. A God who doesn't truly suffer can't redeem human suffering. A human who isn't divine can't save all humanity. Two extreme positions emerged. The first, Nestorianism, named after Nestorius, Patriarch of Constantinople, deposed in 431. Nestorius proposed that Christ's divine and human natures are separate. The human Jesus suffered on the cross, the divine Christ did not. Problem solved. But critics saw a fatal flaw. If the natures are separate, Christ becomes essentially two persons inhabiting one body, and if only the human part suffered, how does that save humanity from sin? A mere human sacrifice can't redeem all of humanity. The divine nature must somehow participate in the suffering for salvation to work. The opposite extreme, monophysitism. Mono means one, physis means nature. Christ has one nature, essentially divine. Their opponents used a devastating metaphor. Christ's humanity was like throwing a bucket of water into the ocean, absorbed, dissolved, insignificant. But this created its own problems. If Christ wasn't truly human, did he truly suffer? Can God, without human elements, actually experience pain and death? And if Christ wasn't really human, how does his sacrifice connect to human salvation? Each position tried to solve the paradox. Each created new theological problems. The church needed a middle path. The Council of Chalcedon met in 451 on the Asian side of the Bosporus. Pope Leo the Great of Rome proposed a formula to thread the needle. Christ has two natures, fully divine and fully human, both complete, both perfect, neither absorbed into the other, yet united in one person, one hypostasis. Hypostasis is a Greek philosophical term meaning an individual concrete existence, not an abstraction, but a real unified being. The Chalcedonian formula declared these natures indivisible yet distinct. Christ is not half God, half human. He is completely God and completely human simultaneously. The council believed they'd solved the problem. They were wrong about the politics. Not everyone accepted Chalcedon. The Patriarch of Alexandria led the resistance. Egypt, Syria, Lebanon, and Palestine remained steadfastly Monophysite. These weren't backwater provinces. Egypt was the empire's breadbasket. Syria controlled crucial trade routes. These regions generated enormous tax revenue and supplied Constantinople with grain. The theological split became a political fracture. Regional identity merged with religious conviction. Rejecting Chalcedon meant rejecting Constantinople's authority. For populations who resented imperial taxation and Greek-speaking administrators, Monophysitism offered both theological conviction and cultural resistance. The empire faced a crisis it couldn't solve. Emperors tried everything to heal the split. Emperor Zeno issued the Henoticon in 482, a unity decree. It declared one of the Trinity was incarnate, while outlawing further discussion. Nobody was satisfied. Chalcedonians felt betrayed. Monophysites wanted explicit rejection of Chalcedon. Emperor Anastasius was openly Monophysite. His reign saw riots in Constantinople. Justinian, the great lawgiver, was fiercely Orthodox. But his wife Theodora held Monophysite sympathies, and this may have been deliberate political strategy, a good cop, bad cop arrangement, allowing both factions to find a sympathetic ear at court. Even this couldn't reunite the church. Every compromise failed. The consequences extended far beyond theology. When Arab armies arrived in the 7th century, Monophysite populations in Egypt and Syria offered little resistance. Why fight to preserve an empire that had persecuted their faith for 2 centuries? The theological fracture weakened Byzantine defenses at the worst possible moment. Regions that had rejected Chalcedon fell quickly to Islamic conquest. The empire lost its wealthiest provinces permanently. A theological debate from 451 shaped the geopolitical map of the medieval world. These 1500-year-old debates aren't dead history. The Monophysite churches never reconciled with Constantinople or Rome. They exist today with tens of millions of members. Coptic Christians in Egypt number approximately 10 million people, roughly 10% of Egypt's population. They trace their theology directly to the rejection of Chalcedon. Ethiopian Orthodox Christians number over 60 million, more than half of Ethiopia's population. Their church descends from the same Monophysite tradition. When you see news about Coptic churches in Egypt or ancient Christian traditions in Ethiopia, you're seeing the direct institutional descendants of those who rejected Chalcedon in 451. What looks like abstract theological hair splitting was actually 3 things at once. First, an existential question about how salvation works. If Christ's nature is wrong, the mechanism of redemption fails. Second, a matter of regional identity. Monophysitism became a way for Egypt and Syria to resist Constantinople's cultural and political dominance. Third, a political crisis that permanently fractured the Byzantine world. The empire never recovered its unity. The theological split created fault lines that Arab conquest would exploit 2 centuries later. The Christological controversies teach a broader lesson about ideas and power, and the next time you encounter a seemingly pointless religious or ideological debate, ask 2 questions. First, what's really at stake? For 5th century Christians, the answer was eternal salvation. Right? The question of Christ's nature determined whether God truly shared human suffering, whether divine sacrifice could redeem humanity. These weren't abstract puzzles. They were matters of life, death, and eternity. Second, who benefits from each position? Constantinople's Chalcedonian orthodoxy reinforced imperial religious authority. Monophysitism gave Egyptian and Syrian populations a way to maintain distinct identity against Greek-speaking administrators. Ideas have consequences, sometimes for millennia. A council decision in 451 still shapes the religious landscape of Northeast Africa. 60 million Ethiopian Christians and the 10 million Egyptian Copts maintain traditions rooted in that ancient rejection of Chalcedon. The bakers and bath attendants of Constantinople were arguing about questions that still matter today.